All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to The Forum, a weekly program of the Columbus Metro Club where we cultivate conversations and connections that truly drive our region forward. The Forum brings together visionary leaders, CEOs, members of Congress, college presidents, UN ambassadors, artists, and changemakers to examine issues that matter, exchange diverse perspectives, and forge connections that truly create a better Columbus. My name is Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. And for those of you who are joining via live stream, we're coming to you from downtown Columbus in the beautiful National Veterans Memorial Museum here in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome to the 2025 Lynn Greer Legacy and Civic Engagement Forum. Thanks to Lynn's generosity, we're able to host conversations just like this that celebrate inclusion and equity for the LGBTQ+ community. So Lynn, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to take a stand, we'd love to acknowledge you, welcome you, and celebrate you. You know, the CMC requires a lot of support from the community, so we're so thankful to today's sponsor, Huckleberry House. We'd also like to thank Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing today's complimentary parking. Hooray for great parking. And thank you for the presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. We're also grateful to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum for hosting us, because as we know, every CMC forum takes a village, so let's thank all of our sponsors. All right, so today's forward-looking conversation, Joy is Resistance, Queer Power in an Unequal World. Queer joy, the radical act of celebrating identity, love, and community, is powerful and political. In the face of anti-LGBTQ+ rhetoric and legislation, joy becomes both a lifeline and a form of resistance. And amid increasing efforts to roll back LGBTQ+ protections, today we're here to explore how queer joy, rooted in identity, community, and resistance, can create a space for justice here in Central Ohio. We are incredibly excited for today's candid, but also uplifting conversation about power, about protest and pride, and joy being seen as something that's safe and free, right? So, and now, please help me welcome today's amazing panelists. Dr. Melanie Korn, president of the Columbus College of Art and Design. Karen Hewitt, founder and principal consultant of K. Hewitt Consulting and co-founder of the Ohio Rest Collective. Dr. Karen Williams, founder and CEO of the International Institute of Humor and Healing Arts. And our host, once again, to CMC, Ron Murray, CEO of Peace of Mind Incorporated and the Community Engagement Liaison for Stonewall, Columbus. Ron, the podium is yours.
Thank you. You're supposed to clap us all get up here. That's what they told me. Okay, let me get set up here. I can still keep clapping, thank you. Well, they asked me back, so this is what they're going to get. They're glutton for punishment. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me back again. So we're here to talk about queer joy. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that and what it looks like, who has access to it, who has the privilege of it, who has the control of it. So we're going to get right into it. She's already introduced us, our panelists. So the first question is, when was the first time you remembered joy? We're going to get real deep into it first. When was the first time you remembered joy? Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets.
I remember joy as freedom, always. Hanging out with my brothers. I'm the oldest of 7. There are 2 brothers under me. And they had to do my bidding, and that made me joyful. And so we were climbing trees, and I'm up in the tree, and my mother says, girls don't climb trees. And I'm up in the tree wondering how I'm going to get down. So that was the first time that my joy was interrupted by, to this day, I ask my mother, she's still alive, what was your modus operandi? What was that about? Why did you even say that? And it was fear-based, you know. everything around girls, most of us had to experience our joy being quashed because we were free and yet not, mostly because of people's fear around what might happen to us. So as a result, I don't remember how I got down from the tree.
I had a very similar experience. I grew up in right near a development that was happening, a suburban development. And so when I was little, we would go run in the fields and play, and we would, climb into the foundations of all these houses that were being built, and it was amazing, and it was great. A lot of freedom, being in the late 70s, early 80s. And I remember very specifically this one time that I was running around outside, no shoes on, no shirt on. I was probably about 5. And some neighbor lady, stopped me and chastised me for not having a shirt on. You can't run around like that. You're growing up. And I just remember, again, the pure joy of childhood freedom, again, being interrupted by, gendered expectations for little girls. And it was a bummer.
I'll jump on that bandwagon. I think it's interesting how you're just in joy. It's a birthright. You're in joy until you're reminded that there are people that don't want you to be in that joy, and then it's a little concerning, probably. But my first memory where I had to grapple with that, we used to go every year. I'll say the first thing. We used to go every year. We had a timeshare in St. Pete, Florida, and so we would go to Disney and stuff. So there's like a lot of awe there. Like I was enamored with everything there and a little in love with Mickey Mouse. However, when I grew up and was playing sports, that was where I was in the church, and so I would play outside. I'd be the only girl playing with them outside, and the guy I was dating at the time said, you're the only girl out there, and it was a thing, and we kind of broke up after that. And then I went on to play in college basketball, and he came and saw me play at Miami of Oxford, Ohio, and he was just like, you're like the best person on the court. And I was like, I know. So, I had joy just playing sports and just being a rowdy, athletic person, and then it was like, it mattered that I was a girl doing that with a bunch of guys, and I didn't see anything wrong with that or any issues with that, and I was really happy because my team always won. So, that was one of those things where it was like, all right, and then it was like, we're not in a relationship anymore. So, I mean, it has some consequences, I think, at times.
Thank you. From hearing the stories, it almost sounds like Newton's law of motion. An object will stay in motion until an outside force acts upon it. It sounds like we're all in our joy until someone tells us we're doing something, until someone tells us it's wrong. And we talked about that in preparing for this panel. So next question I'm going to ask you is, how does race, class, gender, or ability to shape access to joy in an unequal system affects joy? See, we're going real deep.
Yeah, so that's a lot of stuff, yeah? And the reality is, if you look up the difference between joy and happiness, it's really important to know the difference. Happiness is dependent on circumstances. You're happy when you get a new car, a new lover, a new job, and then you're unhappy when the lover leaves, the car gets smashed, and you don't have the job anymore. So there's that thing of relative happiness and absolute happiness, right? Joy is really self-directed. You can bring out joy in really awful circumstances. It's not dependent on an external situation. So the thing that people need to realize is that people experience joy under very impossible kinds of situations. We need to think of like a Nelson Mandela, right? Imprisoned wrongfully, right? And still able to access joy. Enslaved peoples. I mean, just all, the whole issue now is we get so far away from our peoplehood, our personhood, our humanity, our own selves, that we externalize conditions of life that are accessible to us no matter what's going on out there. And so, yes, rights can be taken away, and yes, people are suffering and all of that, and yet you can still access joy.
Amen. That just a hand clap. Yeah.
add to that and say that it goes even beyond, I think, being able to access joy, but really the necessity and the political power of accessing that joy. I think it's no secret that we have a lot of folks in this country right now who are trying to, regulate who we are as queer people, particularly, trans folks. And I think about some of those laws and what their purported purpose is, right? The idea that we are trying to keep other people safe, trying to create equality. And I think about that, I think about, a bathroom bill that says that my, partner who's a trans man who's bald and bearded should be in the women's room because that's going to make everyone safer. And I think about the absurdity of that, and I recognize that that's not actually what they're trying to do. That's not what that's a false pretense, right? And that instead they're trying to diminish the possibility for queerness, for trans identities. And so, the natural response to that, I think, is anger and outrage and protest, and that's 100%, a right thing, I think, to do. But I would argue that I think at times we often say that in those conditions we can't have joy because we have to be angry, we have to be fighting. And I would say that joy, queer joy, is just as radical of a response to oppression, and that's something that we need to maybe try even harder for ourselves and our community to make space for.
I would just say joy is a casualty of unchecked and abused power. Because joy in and of itself, I think, is available to us all. I believe it's a birthright. But folks who are in power and wielding control and that tight grip, and it is fear-based, right? Like, there's a lot of healing that hasn't occurred, that I don't need to control anyone because I'm good with me, right? Like, and so whenever anybody is like in need of controlling a population, a demographic, or saying that someone doesn't exist, to me, that also shows a lack of joy there, right? Like, if I have joy, then I'm not worried about how anybody else expresses their joy. It probably has nothing to do with me. And so in that sense, I think, to the point that racism and sexism and homophobia and all of that is a symptom, a byproduct of fear and not wanting to claim it and not going with the crowd and not being with the socialized thing. And so that's why it's a little radical to me, to first of all be like proud and out. And then also, like, I'm gonna crack a joke. Like, I'm gonna crack a joke at some point and some time. If anybody's ever sat with me in this room, y'all know it's like, it's a problem. But like, and I think that has a lot to do with the work that I do personally, like on my own self. And I think there's a lack of that, gestures at, world administration, et cetera. But I think that's a challenge.
Thank you.
I think we also have to be people who are grateful and pay homage to, in particular, the civil rights movement, which is really the blueprint for all the other movements that exist today. I'm thinking of Fannie Lou Hamer, right? Someone sat next to Fannie Lou Hamer and said to her, I'm gonna beat you to within an inch of your life, and did it, okay? Now, that's who I keep in my spirit. And so attributes like resilience and perseverance and kindness and really taking away this imagery around privilege, because I'm going to tell you, academics and scholars came up with white privilege because it was supremacy and domination. But if you say privilege, it sounds like something I might want or a gift, okay? And it soft soaps it. But it's not a privilege to keep people under your thumb. It's not a privilege to create institutions that bind people to false realities. It's not a privilege to have constructed a metal faceplate for an enslaved woman who talked too much so that all she could do was drool out of the side of her mouth. That's not a privilege. We need to really hold ourselves accountable around the language that we use also. so that we don't just feel like we're in these individual silos of oppression. I'm not going to out-oppress you, okay? I'm just not going to do it, you know? We have to really understand the power dynamic that's out there to oppress us all because we're different. And again, it's fear-based. I will not live in fear. As Karen says, joy is a right. It's a birthright.
So what I heard was that joy was intrinsic, happiness was based on things, joy is a form of protest, and joy is a birthright. Did I sum that up for you? So the next question I have for you is, who was most often left out of the conversation on queer joy, and how do we center around them?
Trans people.
Trans people?
Trans people. That's like, as everything has gone, I think that a lot of times, in my experience at least, identifying with being trans, it's one of those things where I'm having those experiences and curating and creating those experiences, but people aren't gonna come out to stuff if they're not safe. So I think that's something to consider, and we see for a fact how they've tried to separate trans from the LGBT, right? Like they've tried to take that T over here. And also make some of us be, in line with that. And I think that's the line. We don't let that happen. We continue to bring up queer folks and trans folks that we know. We continue to bring up opportunities for us to be in safe spaces with each other. We continue to uplift and amplify and support them with mutual aid and care, knowing that I'm privileged in that space also. Who can I bring into it? Who can I pay? Like, I have a business. Who can I pay to be doing great work? Because it's very innovative and creative work, because they've had to do everything that they've had to come against everything to be great at all. And so there's so much resilience there. And so I would just say trans folks around that.
I'm going to speak up for the L. Just because I gotta. I'm a comic, for those of you that don't know. I'm the first out Black lesbian comic in the United States. And my tours were canceled in 2020. In 2019, I had applied to Miami University in Oxford, and I got my acceptance letter. I went down there, and I just got my PhD in social gerontology in May. I was just sharing with a couple of the lesbians. First of all, my work is called Laughing Out Loud, narratives of the contribution of humor to the health and well-being of older Black lesbians. I had to have 3 different committees. The first one didn't think I should talk about humor, it's too amorphous. The second one was so homophobic, lesbophobic, it was ridiculous. I can't support your work, I don't believe in your work. But then when I got to work, there is so little on lesbians, Black lesbians, and older Black lesbians that I was practically drawing from everybody to create this dissertation. We are invisible, and I am fighting that invisibility.
I'll just add to that to say, I think, the thread that I'm sort of hearing between both of these responses to the question is really about access to community. I agree that I think joy is intrinsic, but I also feel like it is at times much easier to access that joy when you can be in community with others, when you can, again, go to exciting, wonderful queer spaces and see joyful things, when you see that joy modeled for you maybe in others that, if you're having trouble accessing it yourself. And I think that, I would answer that question to say whoever is least able to access community at any given time is probably those who are most left out of this conversation around joy, whether it's trans folks because they fear, being out in space, whether it's, older Black lesbians because they don't have a community in that same way that they have access to. I think all of those, it comes down to that sort of sense of community.
I really agree with you. We have the community. It's just, again, it's almost like Black people that constantly use white people as the standard. Negotiable. Anyway. Straight people, when we're always trying to appeal to straight people, like recognize us, see us, Acknowledge us. It's unrealistic. Some people are here because I went to, you know who Chris Williamson is? Like the grandmother of women's music. She had a concert here last Saturday in Columbus. And I went there. There were 300 white women and 2 black women. You would think then that there are no black lesbians. That's just not the truth. Racism is just so part of the fabric of this American life that to create a really, truly diverse community, we're going to spend our lives doing that. And it's a joy to have that struggle, because part of joy is also rooted in purpose and meaning. That's why it's different from happiness. You can get happy just hanging out with your pal and eating ice cream. But joy also has as a value knowing your purpose and ascribing meaning to it.
So I wouldn't be who I was as a moderator if I didn't put my own piece on this conversation question. I'm gonna speak to my brothers of black gay men. Oftentimes in these settings, in these meetings, we are becoming scarce at these tables. Even though we're in these spaces when we're talking about HIV, when we're talking about other negative things, but oftentimes you don't see our faces there. We're being eliminated in these conversations. So I would say black gay men are not in these conversations because we're not allowed to express ourselves in our true spaces, our authentic selves. So when we show up who we really are, unless we're giggling and smiling with our white counterparts, we're acceptable. But then our passionate, emotional, expressive selves, then we become violent, we become assertive, we become, threatening, and then we're isolated out of the conversations. We're at the tables until we show up who we really are and our intelligent, our beautiful, our huge selves. Then everyone else becomes the victim, and then we don't want them there anymore. So then we become isolated. Oh, we don't want that one at the table, and then we start being isolated because our voice is no longer relevant. But then when our voices become less relevant, then you don't have us at the table, and these conversations happen without us, and then you start speaking up for us and get the message wrong. Just wanted to throw that in there. I'm going back to being moderator, sorry. Next question. How does art, humor, and storytelling sustain queer joy and healing? How does art, humor, storytelling sustain queer joy and healing? Do I sound like Alex Trebek?
I have had the luxury of producing some comedy shows really recently. I am not on this level here, but I'm newer to the stand-up space. I've been doing improv since I was 14, but around stand-up and I have this curated audience that is so multicultural and intergenerational, and getting people there, and I'm highlighting unapologetically black, queer artists, comedians. I even have some musicians. This next one I'm doing, shameless plug, November 7th at the Attic, is all black women comics. Black women are assigned female at birth, and then it's a musician as well. So we're gonna do some house music locally, and they're all black women or assigned female at birth, and it's pretty cool. But then the crowd is getting into it, and then there have been people that have thanked me after these shows and said, I never wanna be in front of an audience that isn't like this, that isn't this diverse, that isn't this open and understanding and literate and critical thinking and all of these things. And you have to come with your A game in that sense as an artist. And I think that push for what is relevant and what can we talk about and what can we make creatively funny, or what can we have our conversations. I do the podcast, and it's we're crying, we're laughing, and then we're probably hugging or spreading some wisdom. I think having the ability to have all that complexity of emotion and interaction is undeniably incredible, and it will pull people out. It's literally healing, and it will pull people out of dark times.
Such a polite audience. Yeah. I know. So I'm the president of Columbus College of Art and Design, and we're just downtown, right down Broad Street. And we focus on visual art and visual design programs. We've got, a little under 1,000 students, and close to 60% of our students identify as part of the LGBTQ community, which is incredible and amazing, and not super uncommon for art and design colleges. But I say that because I think this question is something that I think a lot about on my daily basis, just in my work life. And for me, I think, building off of what Karen was saying, that there is a, there is a way in which creating art, again, gives you an outlet for, of course, your creative spirit and energy, gives you an opportunity to access joy, but also, just being, viewing, being an audience member for the arts, also has, scientific benefits in terms of healing, in terms of just your mental health and wellness, and gives you, again, that opportunity and ability to access joy. And again, just creating those queer spaces. I think, CCAD, I hear so many new students who, they show up, whether it's at a admitted students day visit or when they first get here, and there's such incredible joy that they talk about having found their people, and I think that is so amazing. And again, I think it's all tied to the creative community that they're finding, but also maybe queer community that they're finding for the first time for many, and I think they're wrapped together. I don't have a very clear answer, but they're all just kind of wrapped together. Yeah, it is. It's belonging. It's great.
The healing piece is huge. I think everybody will agree. We've got to heal. We've got to heal from the racism. We've got to heal from the sexism. We've got to heal from this separation. If we were united in even devoting ourselves to healing ourselves, then our families and our communities, it would have such a profound effect. I started my International Institute of Humor and Healing Arts in 1988, living in San Francisco at the height of the AIDS pandemic. And you talk about joy as resistance. A guy would tell me on Tuesday he had AIDS. He was dead on Saturday. It was stark. It was bleak. And those of us who were comics, we'd go to a club. The club would make $1,500, let's say, on a night. They'd bring in a comic, they'd make $3,000, and they would bring that $3,000 to Michael in the hospital. It was that real. And I learned about activism when those guys in the Castro would have an event and raise $250,000 in a night. Because if you remember, around Reagan, he didn't mention HIV/AIDS for 8 years he was in office, okay? So we had to take it in our own hands to be able to be activists, to do our own healing, to fight the trauma at that time. If you remember, people were going in to see people with AIDS in hazmat outfits. It was bleak. It was horrifying. And yet, I'll never forget my friend telling me that he had AIDS. And we cried, and then we laughed and rolled around on the floor, okay? Because the body itself can only take so much grief. And then something else kicks in. That humor and healing piece is so relatable. It's so relevant that we cannot lose our sense of humor in this horrible time we're in, and we must focus on healing.
I do want to add to that with just the thought of I have some different personas, I guess, in public life and professional life, and for a while I was like, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to produce this. I don't want to have to be the producer. I don't want to have to be the talent. I don't want to have to do the marketing. I don't want to have to do all of this. And what I realized is, as I was invited and being an artist in other spaces, there was nothing as comprehensive as I could create with my friends and with all of my intersections and identities. And so I think one thing to note for you all, if it's a call to action, if you're like, I don't know that space, or I want it, you go to something and you're like, there's still something missing, then my encouragement for you is to either find people that can do it with you, because I have an amazing team, but like, do it yourself. Like, create the space yourself. And that's not to say it in like a do-it-yourself way, like you go do it, but there's only you that can do it with your intersections and create belonging for people in your tribe. And I mean, if you find another tribe in some events or things that you go to, fantastic, like great, keep that belonging, stay there, stay locked in. But if you are seeing something and you want to create something and you don't have it, and you know what you want and you have a vision for it, get with people and create it. If not, call me, but get with it and create it, right?
Thank you. So my next question is this. What steps must allies, no, I don't want that one. I don't want that one. Give me another one. What gives you hope that queer joy can endure and grow in today's climate?
All of the people here.
All the people
All the
here.
people here, that you came here, that you are seeking to be a part of. When you're speaking, I'm PhD in gerontology. I'm going to be very ageist right now. I've got, about maybe 40 years on you, maybe 30. How old are you? 40, okay, 30 years, excuse me. Those young people. Anyway, what I'm saying is, I love that this, she almost embarrassed me in the advertisement for this event because she kept saying, my shiro, and this and that and the other. I am. Because you can now say diverse, but those women over there know that when I was entertaining them 30 and 40 years ago, it was just me and a sea of white women. And I used to say to myself, what makes you think that I'm so brave? That I can come places, Chris Williamson, you saw it, 300 white women, it's 2025. There were 2 black women there, me the MC, and one other person, okay? Why is this still like this? What inner work have I had to do to keep showing up? If I didn't believe in joy as resistance, I would just drop out. Many times I wanted to drop out, but I thought if I drop out, no one else will be there. And then she shows up. No, 30 years later, okay? I'm telling you the truth. But my joy, the inner healing I've done, what I've contributed, you'll all see the documentary in January, what I've contributed is real. And in the meantime, I've done tremendous healing. I've helped heal communities. And our joy is, it's real. It's tangible. And it takes people to be fearless in terms of the pursuit of our humanity, our personhood, our right to be joyful.
What was the question again?
Your Bibles to Matthew, verse 1. What gives you hope that queer joy can endure and grow in today's climate?
I'll add to the mush, to that point, I remember us talking one time and we were trying to get together because I'm like, I think you reached out to me on Facebook. You're like, I think I need to know you. I'm like, oh my God, please accept my friend request. But as we were trying to connect, it's like, oh, I'm going on this Olivia cruise, or oh, I'm going, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, no big deal. But I think representation is always important when you can see somebody doing things and you can follow in a footstep and know that it's possible for you. But what continues to have me hopeful is the legacy of pioneering, the legacy of doing it alone, the legacy of doing it scared, the legacy of doing it without knowing where your next resources were gonna come from for said project. Whatever that was, all the sacrifices, everything comes with a cost. So whatever they had to sacrifice, just knowing that was like the civil rights movement happened. Like they're walking back things from the civil rights movement. It's been done before with way less technology and with way less ability to connect across regions and states and even countries. But I think that it's possible because we've seen it literally happen before. The people in the civil rights movement didn't have that. You know what I mean? So if you're thinking about that and all the revolts, you can go all the way back to enslavement. Like there were revolts and there were, you have Black Wall Street, you had Tulsa. Like you have all of these places you have that have been, tried to deflate it. They tried to deflate those folks. And we continue to, and Black people do it real well. I don't know if y'all have ever been to a cookout. I don't know if they're giving out those invitations right now. It might be a few years on that, but nevertheless, if you've ever been to a cookout, we gonna clown each other. And that's like the way I show you love. If somebody's not joking with me, or if I'm not joking with somebody, I don't fool with you. You know what I'm saying? And so like that ability to laugh at yourself, that ability to laugh at each other, we need that walking into what we're walking into or continuing to walk into right now. And so just being able to see that that movement has occurred and that they're actually walking it back, that to me, the fact that they're walking it back shows me how much joy and how much resilience was required to get to that place in the first place. So the fact that they're trying to squander it always lets me know exactly what path I'm on. Like, oh, I'm doing it right. I'm doing it right if they're coming after it because they don't have it.
Yeah. I'll just add quickly to that. I think one of the other things that gives me hope right now, I think, is, again, sort of thinking generationally. Again, I wouldn't be a college president if I didn't say, our students, right, our younger folks who are fierce in their willingness to, find, again, opportunities for expression and joy. And the other piece of that, I think, is technology. I think, as horrible in many ways as it can be for democracy and other things that we care about, it also can be an opportunity. And I think when it comes to, queer joy, joy as resistance, I think the tools that we have now that we didn't necessarily have even 10 years ago, much less 20, 30, 40 years ago, give us new opportunities and platforms to find community, to reach across, time and space in ways that I think create opportunities, again, for art, for resistance, for culture, for joy in new and expansive ways.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. It is CMC's long tradition to take audience questions and those on a live stream as well. So we'll move to the questions from a live stream and in-person audience in just a few minutes. So I'm going to ask one last question. If you have any questions, please make your way over to the microphone now. And if you're joining us on YouTube, while we're on YouTube, if you're joining us on YouTube, please type your questions into the chat before we take audience questions. Panelists, I have one more question for you. What's one practice you recommend for individuals or organizations to center joy in daily life or programming? What's one practice you recommend for individuals or organizations to center joy in their daily life or programming? Or legislation? Or city ordinance? Or rules? Or bills? Or funding?
I'll start with just a simple, personal one. I think, first of all, stop the guilt, right? The guilt about, taking time for joy when you should be, fighting hard. Taking time to do nothing and zoning out in whatever that looks like to you, whether that's going down rabbit holes or scrolling. I think, that time of just restoration is important to be able to access joy. And I will also say that I think, laughing every day is important because it takes that muscle memory. And I know not all joy is laughing. I think, again, as opposed to happiness, it can be a much deeper, quiet feeling. But I do think just literal laughing out loud expression just like physically reminds your body that is something that is important and actually physically changes your body with, endorphins and serotonin and all that good stuff.
Drugs.
Yeah, drugs. Right, drugs.
Natural drugs.
No, the natural. I'll say natural drugs. Excuse me. I had a flashback.
Intrinsic drugs like
I'm
joy.
sorry. I had a flashback.
Yeah. The drugs that come naturally inside
absolutely.
of you.
The natural ones are best. So.
The views of the panel do not reflect the CMC
I am a woman of a
organization.
certain age. I can't lie. I did inhale. Anyway, really bouncing off what you're saying. Self-care. It's a term now that almost feels a little bit overused, and we don't really know what that means. Like we think bubble bath or something like that. No, self-care is if that toxic person is coming over to talk to you one more time, you don't have to talk to them. Okay, you really don't have to talk to them. If there's negativity all around you, people who just complain, chronic complainers, get to stepping. I don't have time for that. Okay, I mean, and it really takes a lot to really put yourself first. And I don't mean in that classic way we're hearing now, narcissism. I'm talking about a way that keeps you, I meditate twice a day, every day. I've been a Buddhist for 53 years. I mean, you know, sorry, brother, but it's okay. No, really, seriously, you must find something that gives you that inner peace and that stamina that says, I am able to stand on my own no matter what's going on, who's coming at me, what's happening out there. I am safe. I am at peace. I am in joy. And I am enjoying this gift called life. We've got to be grateful for the very gift of life itself, because there are people, and especially to safeguard our health, we must safeguard our health. So that self-care piece is very, very important. And I really hope that, because I'm just getting there. You know, a lot of us are how many of you are caregivers? Oh, it's exhausting, exhausting. And then you do feel guilty when you step away and you take time for yourself. But if you tell yourself that without taking care of myself, I don't have anything to give, then it makes sense that you do put yourself first.
I really love what both of you have said. So to me, in my head, I'm a math major, I'm starting to put equations. So I'm like, oh, peace plus restoration are the conditions that are necessary for joy. And so I say I write to heal. I create to heal, and I share to be in community. And so for me, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Artist Way. Yeah, we got some hands. And for those of you that aren't, I think it's around 7, I have to remember that workshop we did at the Museum of Art, but like around 7, you know, we start getting that socialization about our creativity, and we're told not to, you know, embrace it, and we're told to get serious, you know, and then we start to, and that veil thins up a little bit. And I would just say, you know, try to go back to childlike wonder as much as possible and write it. It doesn't have to be good to anybody else. It's for you. And then if you're sharing, you know, share where it feels safe. It's vulnerable because it's like you're just completely exposed out there as an artist. But I think, you know, Nina Simone said that, you know, it's an artist's duty to represent the times. And I think if I'm not doing that, then what am I doing? And so to the practices and self-care, I have like a scroll of like practices because I need a lot to regulate. But I think to that, do the art, post it, just say it. You're gonna find somebody that connects with it. And if you get one person that connects with it, I think we've done our job to let people know that they're not alone.
And dance. Dance is the only exercise that affects dementia. The only one. Dance. Don't worry about how you look. Don't, you know, white people, I know you do 1 in 3, but dance anyway, okay? It's fine. We won't laugh, you know. Just dance.
We'll put our hands up with you, really. Like, you know, we'll do it. We'll do the things. Dance.
Thank you so much. Now, Doug Buchanan with CMC is curating questions from our live stream audience. For those of you who are here with us, please join Doug over at the microphone. Doug, what is our first question?
Ron, thank you very much, and thank you so much to today's panelists for a great conversation. As Ron said, if you have a question for today's panelists, please do join me here at the microphone. If you're watching online, type your question into the chat. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible. Great questions at CMC always have 2 things in common for our regulars. They take just a few seconds to ask, and what punctuation mark does a question end with? They end with a question mark. Yes, thank you very much to our regulars. I'm going to launch us off with this question from the live stream audience. Tommy Young says he is an out and proud gay man. How do we bring our own community together to join forces with other communities to stand together? And Karen, I think this builds on some of your comments already.
Do you want to answer the question?
What was the question again, please? I was turning the page. My ADHD kicked in. I'm sorry.
Tommy Young wants to know, how do we bring our own community together to join forces with other communities to stand together?
Oh, he's an out gay man? So you want to ask the gay man on the stage that question? Okay. I don't feel marginalized at all. Okay. Tommy. Well, Tommy, thank you for your question. Well, Tommy, I think you find it. I think we talked about it here. Find community and belonging. I think that there are spaces that we come together oftentimes, but we first. I'll just speak from my perspective as a gay man. We want to bring ourselves together with other communities, but we don't find ourselves. Other communities don't find us inviting. As being very honest and transparent. Oftentimes, we think we are invited, but we're really not. We have to first make sure our spaces are open and inviting, to make ourselves accommodating to other communities, just as accommodating we want them to be for us. We want them to learn our pronouns, our idiosyncrasies, and how to respect us, but we want also to respect their spaces as well. So as much as we want them to learn us and respect us, we have to do the same thing to them when we're in their spaces, and then we can come together. It doesn't take that long, it's not that hard. But also find where those intersections meet at. Karen spoke about intersections earlier. When you're building your own community to find out where your joy is, we can do that together with one another. We're not that different. And so finding out where we meet at. Sometimes our enemy of our enemy is our friend. Figuring out that we're better together, we have more in common together, to figuring out how do we beat these strongholds that are against us. Thank you, Tommy.
Well, thank you all. My name is Shannon Hart, and I have the honor of serving as City Council President here in Columbus. Also a person of intersections of being out, gay and black male leading our community. My question is, because the conversation was so rich and brilliant in helping us navigate this moment, what role does compartmentalization play in joy? Is compartmentalization a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We try to save space for our families and our loved ones, but we have so much stuff coming in. What is our thought on the idea of compartmentalizing to find joy, or just even to survive?
That's a very deep question. We all do a little bit of in-grouping. And sometimes that's where that safety comes from. When we talk about safety, we're saying that I'm part of an in-group, and I can look outside and sometimes even make fun of that other group. But again, that's that circumstantial happiness. The reality is that to compartmentalize doesn't really help. It just doesn't. It adds to the division that's already being accented in this culture. And I don't find it to be that useful. When we're talking about resilience, the reason that resilience has meaning is because it assumes that there was some pushback. People grow through challenge. Some of what's happening now, why these white men are so angry, because they've lived in this privilege where they expect certain things. And they're mad because the trans people, the black people, the gay people, we've had to do so much pushback that now we're hardy, we're resilient, we're well-trained, very educated, getting some of the money, and they're pissed off because they don't have those traits, many of them. Because that illusion of privilege, right, meant that they did not have to work as hard or challenge as many barriers. And so what that leads to is anger. How many of you have children, right? When you don't give your child what they want, when they want it, in the way that they want it, what do? They have tantrums, right? And then you have to explain to them or, meet some harsh punishment to which they then grow. Hopefully, it's not too harsh. But it's that constant kind of push and pull that actually brings out the best in people. It's when we're all together that we really grow. We don't grow in our own separate silos. We grow when the population is diverse. Any of you architects in here? The best housing is mixed housing. Yeah, we need to have diversity for our own survival and to maintain the hope and resilience that we want to see.
Just really quickly, just to add, it's when you were asking that question, Shannon, I was thinking about it in terms of sort of emotional, compartmentalization, and I feel like I don't even know if that's a real thing, right? Like, kind of like we all talked about how everyone multitasks, and then someone was finally like, there's no such thing as multitasking. It's just, fast switching between focuses, right? I kind of feel the same is true of this notion of compartmentalization. Like, can you really take your rage and anger and stick it in a box? I don't know that you can. And so I feel like we have to figure out how to have joy in the same space as rage, not like in a different space. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think it's about taking that fire of rage and letting that fire feed the joy as well.
I love that, and what I'll say to that is I have a tendency to be able to compartmentalize, and what I think I realized after some years of therapy for me is that intrinsically, like, I get to show up fully, and I think that there are times when I can express fully, and there are times when I can't express fully. And I know those places, and I don't have too much on my calendar where I'm not allowed to show up fully. And I mean, I've worked really hard to get there, but I think with everything going on and the onslaught of information, propaganda, et cetera, I think it's really challenging to, in the moment, always process, right? But if you have a practice for processing, if, like, I write in the morning and I do brain dumps at night on a voice memo, right? Like, so just to clear my brain out so I can just sleep. Because I have that hypercognitive type of neurodivergence. And so I think, it doesn't serve me, and I have this whole thing about, like, point of loss and, like, what has to happen for you to get to the point where you're like, no more. But I don't know if it's being over 40 or what. I'm just like, I don't want to be in any space where I can't show up fully. Even if you know that about me and I'm not, like, expressing gaily or whatever, if I'm not expressing in that way, that you still know that about me. Like, I'm pretty vulnerable and transparent about that kind of stuff, my identities, but I think making sure that you're in spaces where you're celebrated and centered. And there's a difference between being centered and being tolerated, as Ron was talking about. I think when you're centered and when you're fully accepted, like, all of you. And so trying to lean into those spaces more. And I know that's not always possible, especially in the work that you do. But what I would say is to, have your confidants and have your circle where you can have your first reaction, where you can move through that emotion and release that energy and maybe dance a little bit too afterwards, you know what I'm saying? But, like, you need to have, like, an emergency grounding plan. I think at this point in America, in this time, you need to have an emergency grounding plan. Like, I need 15 minutes to regulate my nervous system again. I gotta come down from what I just saw, what I just read, what I just had a conversation about. It really, really matters to make sure you have those people around you that you can say whatever you have to say, and then they're gonna be like, okay, now what are we gonna do?
Thank you. We have 3 minutes left for a final question.
Hello, I'll be quick. Thank you. I'm Joseph Souza. I just want to ask about grief, actually, really quick. And I'm just going to leave it an open-ended question. Anything you have to say about the relationship and or maybe tension between grief and joy?
I do a lot of grief work, and I wouldn't, if you would have told me 10 years ago that my workshops would be around wellness, regulation of nervous systems, grief and loss and change, I would probably be like, nah, I don't want to do that. But, like, it's present right now. And so I think the thing about grief is that it really is all that love, all that memory, all that joy that you had with that person, place, or thing, and then, or that moment, right? And then you're trying to process that because it doesn't exist anymore. So you had some belonging there, or you had some love there, and then you're trying to figure out, how does this still exist in me without this person, place, or thing? And so where joy comes in to me is to be able to, in those moments of nostalgia, in those moments of memory, to just be able to, like, howl and cackle and, like, laugh and remember in joy. Remember in joy, like, be with it in joy, be with the grief in joy. And I always say invite the grief. Not always, I've recently started saying invite the grief because I haven't previously. And when you invite the grief, you have to process, you have to deal with those emotions. And on the other side of that is acceptance and possibly joy, right? And hopefully you can find that.
I think we need to release ourselves from the idea that every moment is going to be a happy moment. We are addicted to happiness in its really kind of very superficial form. I see that someone's mother dies, you get 2 days off from your job. That's unrealistic. And what's worse is you conform to it. I just ran into someone yesterday, her brother died in July,
And I ran after her, and I said, Barb, how are you? She says, I'm fine. And the I'm fine was so loud and false, I couldn't bring myself to say, but how are you after your brother just died? Because we want to be fine no matter what. And I found myself being inhibited. You know, you're Midwesterners, you know, I'm a New Yorker, man. I'm fucked up. You know, that's how I feel. My fucking brother died, you know? But I don't get that in the Midwest. I get fine. You're not fine if your brother just died. Cut it out. Who are you being fine for? What do you have to do that's so important? Grieve. Take the time. Feel the feeling. Get to the memories. And some days, you won't do that well. You'll be really fucked up. But it's okay. It's part of the human condition. And you can still nurture hope, and you can still feel joy, because we're not monolithic. We are complex.
Well, thank you. I'll end with that quote. So it's funny you asked the question. I was looking for a quote the other day about grief, and I'll end with this one. Regina King, you all know, lost her son, and somebody asked her about grief, and she said, grief is love that has no place to go. And I think about that quote often. So as I end the panel discussion, we heard today that joy can exist in our darkest parts. We heard that joy is healing. Joy can be found in community and belonging. Joy is protest. Joy is our birthright, and we are joy and collectively in each other. Don't you all mess with nobody's joy trying to find your own. Y'all hear me?
Wow. Okay. That was so beautiful and so helpful. Selfishly, for me, I thought that the conversation around joy and grief was such a wonderful reminder in today's political and climate and just today's life. Karen, you mentioned Fannie Lou Hamer, and I started to think about who do you look towards when you're trying to find inspirations for joy, especially in the face of resilience and perseverance. For me, I'm a huge fan of Polly Murray. I think that her entire life, everything that she's accomplished, is absolutely tremendous. She has a quote, "Hope is a song on a weary throat. But if hope is a song on a weary throat, then joy must be rebellion in the face of despair." So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. I want to thank the Len Greer Legacy and Civic Engagement Fund for supporting us. A huge thank you to Huckleberry House, as well as the Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing today's parking, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and the Columbus Dispatch, and the National Veterans Memorial Museum. But most importantly, I want to thank today's panelists, Melanie Korn, Karen Hewitt, Karen Williams, and Ron Murray for facilitating such a wonderful conversation. All right, so for those of you who are not familiar with the Columbus Metropolitan Club, we do this every single week. Every week we have a conversation that matters to Central Ohioans, and next week we'll be doing the same right here at National Veterans Memorial Museum, October 15th for a lunch forum. Downstream Decisions: Is Ohio's Water Future at Risk? I invite you all to come back. Thank you all for being here today, and have a great afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.